The silence in Manhattan's most prestigious law firm was deafening. In the marble-lined conference room of Cromwell, Sterling and Associates, where billion-dollar deals are made and corporate empires rise and fall, a $500 Harvard attorney was about to make the biggest mistake of his legal career. Marcus Wellington III, third-generation lawyer and golden boy of big law, sat smugly in his $3,000 Italian leather chair, preparing to dismiss someone he considered beneath his intellectual superiority. On the large screen before him, Judge Judith Scheindlin waited patiently, having been specifically requested by the firm's most important client for a consultation that could determine the outcome of a multi-million-dollar case. What Wellington didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that Judge Judy had been secretly investigating him for the past 48 hours. She knew something about his legal career that would destroy everything he had built, something so damaging that it would end his partnership at one of America's most elite law firms within hours of this meeting. Wellington, in his arrogance, was about to attack the one person who held the key to his professional destruction. The words that came out of Wellington's mouth in the next 30 seconds would be recorded, leaked, and become the most humiliating legal takedown in modern history. But Judge Judy's response, nobody could have predicted it. What she revealed about Wellington's hidden secret didn't just end his career at the prestigious firm. It exposed a truth about the American legal system that sent shockwaves through every law school, every courtroom, and every legal conference room in the country. She didn't just defend herself against his attack. She systematically dismantled everything he had ever accomplished with information that proved he was nothing more than an expensive fraud. Before we dive into this incredible story of legal justice, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of the explosive courtroom drama we cover. Trust me, when you hear what Judge Judy knew about this attorney's darkest secret, you'll understand why this became the most talked about legal confrontation of the year. This wasn't just another lawyer getting put in his place. This was the moment when America's legal elite discovered that their $500 golden boy had been living a lie, and the TV judge they dismissed as entertainment had the receipts to prove it. By the time Judge Judy was finished, Wellington wouldn't just be unemployed. He would be facing questions that could end his entire legal career forever. To understand how Judge Judy came to possess career-destroying information about one of Manhattan's most arrogant attorneys, you need to know why this consultation was happening in the first place, and why it would become the most expensive 5 minutes in legal history. This wasn't just another routine legal meeting. This was a collision between two worlds that should never have intersected, a clash between old money legal privilege and street-smart judicial experience that would expose the rotting foundation of America's most prestigious law firms. Marcus Wellington III worked at Cromwell, Sterling and Associates, a law firm so exclusive that they didn't advertise, didn't compete for clients, and didn't hire anyone who hadn't graduated in the top 5% of an Ivy League law school. Founded in 1892, the firm occupied 17 floors of a glass tower overlooking Central Park, where the cheapest office space rented for more per month than most Americans earned in a year. This was the kind of place where partners drove Bentleys, summered in the Hamptons, and considered a $500 per hour billing rate a modest fee for their intellectual superiority. The firm's client list read like a who's who of Fortune 500 companies, foreign governments, and billionaire families who needed problems to disappear quietly and expensively. Wellington represented everything that was wrong with elite legal culture in America. He was the poster child for a system where legal ability mattered less than legal connections, where family name opened more doors than courtroom victories, and where billing hours was more important than actually winning cases. At 35, he had already been fast-tracked to senior associate and was being groomed for partnership, not because of his trial record, which was non-existent, but because his grandfather had been a federal judge and his father was managing partner at a competing firm. Wellington specialized in the kind of law that never saw the inside of a courtroom, complex corporate transactions and securities regulations that were handled entirely through paperwork and conference room negotiations. The consultation had been requested by Harrison Industries, a family-owned manufacturing empire worth over $2 billion that had been Cromwell Sterling's client for 3 generations. The company was facing a crisis that threatened to tear apart both the business and the family that owned it. Richard Harrison, the 78-year-old patriarch, was being challenged by his own children in a dispute that involved succession planning, family trusts, and allegations of financial mismanagement that could result in criminal charges if handled incorrectly. The case combined elements of corporate law, estate planning, family dynamics, and potential federal prosecution in a way that had the firm's most experienced partners nervous about their strategy. But here's where the story gets interesting and where Judge Judy enters the picture in a way that nobody could have anticipated. Harrison Industries wasn't just any family business. Richard Harrison had been watching Judge Judy's television show religiously for over 15 years, not for entertainment, but because he recognized something that the legal establishment had missed. Judge Judy didn't just handle small claims, disputes about bounced checks and broken contracts. She handled family disputes involving money, power, and betrayal, with a precision and insight that reminded Harrison of his own family's dynamics. He had watched her untangle complex family business relationships, expose liars and fraudsters, and cut through legal manipulation with a clarity that impressed him more than any attorney he had ever hired. When Harrison's family crisis reached the point where criminal charges were possible and millions of dollars hung in the balance, he made a decision that shocked everyone. He insisted that Cromwell Sterling bring in Judge Judy as a consultant, not because she was famous, but because she was the only legal mind he had ever encountered who seemed to understand how family dynamics actually worked in high-stakes business disputes. Harrison had done his research, and he knew that Judge Judy had handled similar cases during her 25 years on the family court bench, cases involving wealthy families, complex trusts, and business succession disputes that never made it to television, but were far more complicated than anything Wellington had ever encountered. The partners at Cromwell Sterling were horrified by the request, but Harrison Industries represented over $40 million in annual billings, making them the firm's most valuable client. When a client of that magnitude makes a specific demand, even the most prestigious law firm finds a way to accommodate it. The consultation was scheduled, and Wellington, as the lead attorney on the case, was tasked with managing the meeting and keeping it brief enough to minimize what the partners saw as an embarrassing publicity stunt. What none of them knew, what Wellington couldn't have imagined in his worst nightmares, was that Judge Judy had spent the previous 2 days doing exactly what any experienced judge would do when faced with a complex case. She had researched everyone involved, including the attorneys who would be representing the family's interests. Her research into Wellington had uncovered something that would have ended his career years earlier, if anyone had bothered to look closely enough at his track record. Judge Judy discovered that Wellington had been systematically lying about his qualifications for his entire career. His Harvard Law Review editorship, which he claimed on his resume and used as the foundation of his reputation, was completely fabricated. His supposed expertise in securities law was based entirely on theoretical knowledge with no practical application. Most damaging of all, she had found evidence that Wellington had been billing clients for work he wasn't qualified to perform, essentially committing fraud on a massive scale while hiding behind his family connections and Ivy League credentials. The consultation was supposed to be a routine meeting where Judge Judy would offer some folksy wisdom about family dynamics, allowing Wellington to demonstrate his superior legal knowledge while keeping one of the firm's most important clients happy. Instead, it was about to become the most expensive mistake in Wellington's career, because he was about to condescend to and attack the one person in America who had the evidence to destroy everything he had built on lies and family privilege. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose the difference between real legal expertise and expensive legal theater. On one side, a television judge with decades of actual courtroom experience and a folder full of damaging research. On the other side, a privileged attorney whose entire career was built on connections, credentials, and a reputation that was about to be revealed as completely fraudulent. Wellington was about to learn that in the legal profession, as in life, the truth has a way of coming out when you least expect it and can least afford it. This wasn't just going to be another consultation. This was going to be a reckoning that would force the entire legal establishment to confront the uncomfortable reality that some of their most expensive attorneys were nothing more than well-educated fraudsters. And sometimes it takes an outsider to expose the truth that everyone else was too polite, too intimidated, or too invested to acknowledge. Marcus Wellington III was born into legal royalty, the kind of family where Supreme Court justices attended birthday parties and federal judges were considered family friends rather than distant authorities. At 35, he had achieved everything that American legal education promised its most privileged students: a corner office in Manhattan's most exclusive law firm, a billing rate that exceeded the annual salary of most judges, and a reputation as one of the brightest legal minds of his generation. What nobody knew, what his carefully crafted resume and family connections had hidden for over a decade, was that Marcus Wellington III was the most successful fraud in modern legal history. Growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, Wellington never doubted that he would follow in his family's footsteps. His grandfather, Federal Judge Harrison Wellington Jr., had been appointed to the bench by Ronald Reagan and served with distinction for 23 years. His father, Marcus Wellington Jr., was managing partner at Sullivan & Cromwell, one of Wall Street's most prestigious firms, where he specialized in international corporate law and commanded fees that made millionaires out of law school graduates. Young Marcus grew up assuming that legal success was his birthright, something that came naturally to men with his surname and social connections. The problems began at Harvard Law School, where Wellington discovered that intelligence couldn't be inherited like trust funds and family names. Despite his advantages, despite the tutors and prep courses that his father's money could buy, Wellington struggled academically in ways that shocked his professors and terrified his family. He was smart enough to understand complex legal concepts, but not brilliant enough to excel among Harvard's genuinely gifted students. His grades were mediocre, his class participation was forgettable, and his chances of making law review, the credential that would validate his family's expectations, were virtually non-existent. That's when Wellington made the decision that would define his entire career. Instead of accepting his limitations and finding a legal path that matched his actual abilities, he chose to manufacture the credentials he couldn't earn honestly. Working with a friend in the registrar's office, Wellington altered his academic records, improving his grades just enough to qualify for law review consideration. When that wasn't sufficient, he fabricated an entirely fictional editorship, creating fake publications and false references that nobody bothered to verify because of his family name and connections. The fraud worked perfectly because prestigious law firms don't actually investigate the credentials of candidates from elite families. Wellington's resume, enhanced with his fictional Harvard Law Review editorship and artificially inflated grades, opened every door that his natural abilities had closed. Cromwell Sterling offered him a position based on his family connections and his seemingly impressive academic record, never suspecting that half of his qualifications existed only on paper. Wellington's career flourished because he was smart enough to avoid situations that would expose his limitations. He specialized in corporate transactions that never went to trial, complex paperwork that could be handled through research and consultation rather than actual legal argument. He became an expert at looking impressive in conference rooms while ensuring that he never had to demonstrate real legal skills in courtrooms where his fraud would be immediately obvious to experienced judges and opposing counsel. For 12 years, Wellington's strategy worked flawlessly. He billed millions of dollars in fees, earned promotions based on his family connections and carefully managed reputation, and built a career that made him the envy of his Harvard classmates who had actually earned their credentials honestly. His colleagues respected his theoretical knowledge, his clients trusted his family name, and nobody questioned whether the golden boy of American legal privilege actually deserved his success. But Wellington had made one crucial mistake that would destroy everything he had built through deception and family influence. He had become so convinced of his own superiority, so comfortable with his fraudulent success, that he believed he could condescend to and dismiss anyone he considered beneath his manufactured status. He was about to discover that Judge Judy was not just anyone, and his arrogance was about to collide with someone who had actually earned her reputation through decades of real legal work. While Marcus Wellington was fabricating credentials at Harvard, Judith Scheindlin was earning hers the hard way in the trenches of Manhattan's family court system. What television audiences knew as Judge Judy, the sharp-tongued dispenser of common-sense justice, was actually one of the most accomplished and feared judges in New York's judicial history. Long before she became America's most famous TV personality, Judge Judy had built a reputation as the judge that lawyers feared most and litigants respected absolutely. Born in Brooklyn to working-class parents, Scheindlin worked her way through law school while raising 2 young children and holding down part-time jobs that taught her more about real people and real problems than any Ivy League education could provide. After graduation, she briefly worked at a corporate law firm, but quickly realized that her calling was in family court, where legal decisions affected real families facing real crises, rather than corporate entities shuffling money between accounts. As a family court judge in Manhattan for 25 years, Judge Judy handled over 20,000 cases involving every type of family dispute imaginable. She presided over divorce proceedings that involved hundreds of millions of dollars, custody, battles between powerful families, and complex estate disputes that made Wellington's corporate transactions look simple by comparison. Her courtroom was where New York's wealthy families came when their private disputes became public scandals, where business empires were divided among warring heirs, and where family fortunes were won and lost based on her judicial decisions. What made Judge Judy legendary among New York's legal community wasn't just her experience but her investigative instincts. She had an uncanny ability to spot liars, fraudsters, and manipulators from across her courtroom. During her judicial career, she had exposed dozens of attorneys who were misleading their clients, uncovered financial fraud in complex family trusts, and sent several lawyers to disciplinary hearings for professional misconduct. Her reputation for thorough preparation and devastating cross-examination made her the judge that dishonest lawyers avoided at all costs. When Judge Judy agreed to consult on the Harrison Industries case, she approached it with the same methodical preparation that had made her feared in family court. She didn't just review the case materials. She investigated everyone involved, including the attorneys who would be handling the family's legal strategy. Her 48 hours of research into Marcus Wellington III had uncovered a pattern of deception that shocked even someone who had spent decades exposing legal fraud. Judge Judy had discovered documentation proving that Wellington's Harvard Law Review credentials were completely fabricated, that his academic record had been altered, and that he had been billing clients for legal expertise he didn't actually possess. More importantly, she had traced his fraudulent billing practices to specific cases, including several where his incompetence had cost clients millions of dollars in settlements that could have been avoided with competent legal representation. Wellington was about to face the one person in America who had both the legal authority and the documented evidence to destroy his career, and he had no idea what was coming. The video conference began exactly as Wellington had planned. Judge Judy appeared on the screen, professional and composed, having reviewed all the Harrison Industries case materials. Wellington, surrounded by 3 junior associates and feeling supremely confident in his marble-columned conference room, decided to establish his dominance immediately. "Your Honor," Wellington began, his voice dripping with condescension, "while I appreciate Harrison Industries' request for your perspective, I think we should clarify expectations here. This is a complex multi-jurisdictional corporate succession matter involving federal securities regulations and international trust structures. It's quite different from the neighborhood disputes you typically handle." Judge Judy's response was measured but pointed. "Mr. Wellington, I've been practicing law since 1965. I've handled family business disputes worth more than most corporate transactions." Wellington laughed dismissively. "I'm sure you've seen your share of family drama, Judge Judy, but this requires sophisticated understanding of corporate law and fiduciary responsibilities. These aren't matters that can be resolved with television-style common sense." The tension in the room became palpable as Wellington continued. "Frankly, I'm not sure why we're consulting someone whose legal experience is limited to small claims entertainment when we have Harvard-trained attorneys who understand actual complex litigation." Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Wellington, I think you should be very careful about the assumptions you're making about my qualifications and your own." Judge Judy's voice turned ice cold. "Mr. Wellington, since you want to discuss qualifications, let me share what I discovered during my research on you." She held up a folder visible through the video screen. "These are your actual Harvard Law School transcripts, which I obtained through proper legal channels." Wellington's face went white as she continued. "Your Harvard Law Review editorship, completely fabricated. Your grades, altered. Your expertise in securities law, based on theoretical knowledge you've never actually applied because you've never tried a single case in your 12-year career." The room fell silent, except for the sound of Wellington's career imploding. "I also have billing records showing you've charged clients over $2 million for legal work you weren't qualified to perform. That's called fraud, Mr. Wellington." Judge Judy leaned forward. "So before you question my qualifications again, perhaps you should explain to your colleagues why Harvard has no record of your law review editorship, and why 3 of your former clients are considering malpractice suits." Wellington sat speechless, unable to respond as his carefully constructed facade crumbled on live video in front of his associates and client. If you're enjoying this incredible legal destruction, smash that subscribe button because this gets even better. The aftermath will shock you. Within 2 hours of the consultation, Marcus Wellington III's legal career was over. The video recording, made by Harrison Industries for their records, was immediately forwarded to Cromwell Sterling's managing partners. By 6 p.m. that same day, Wellington was called into an emergency meeting and terminated for cause, with the firm citing fraudulent credentials and potential client liability as grounds for immediate dismissal without severance. The legal community erupted when news of Wellington's exposure leaked. Harvard fraud exposed by Judge Judy became the top story on every legal publication. Bar associations launched investigations, former clients filed malpractice suits, and law schools began Implementing stricter credential verification processes, Wellington's fabricated resume had fooled some of America's most prestigious firms for over a decade, raising uncomfortable questions about how elite legal institutions actually vet their golden boys. Judge Judy's consultation with Harrison Industries proved invaluable, leading to a legal strategy that saved the family business and avoided criminal prosecution entirely. Her reputation in the legal community, already formidable, reached legendary status as the TV judge who could spot legal fraud better than Harvard-educated partners. Wellington disappeared from the legal profession entirely, his law license suspended pending investigation. He learned the hardest possible lesson, that real expertise can't be faked, and sometimes it takes an outsider to expose what insiders were too impressed by credentials to notice. The moral was crystal clear. In law, as in life, your worth isn't determined by where you went to school or how much you charge per hour. It's determined by your integrity, your actual knowledge, and your willingness to earn respect through results rather than steal it through deception. And when you attack someone who has spent decades earning their reputation the honest way, you better make sure your own credentials can survive the scrutiny. If this story of legal justice inspired you, make sure to subscribe and share this video with anyone who needs to remember that fake it till you make it doesn't work when you're facing someone who actually made it. Let us know in the comments what you thought of Judge Judy's devastating takedown, and check out our other videos about arrogant professionals getting the reality checks they deserve.